Welcome everyone to Saber and Focus Home's new game, RoadCraft. In the last few months, videos and news postings on this new title ushered in feelings of excitement, disappointment, and perhaps everything in between depending on players' perspectives. Today I'm going to show you my own gameplay, experiences, and my pure unfiltered thoughts on RoadCraft. In this video, I'll talk in brief detail of some things I enjoyed and some things I did not. For the sake of time, I will reserve my expanded thoughts on some things for live streams. So without wasting any more time, here are 10 things I liked and 10 things I disliked about RoadCraft. The largest letdown of this title for players that are looking to get into playing RoadCraft or potentially just checking out the game in itself, simply put here, there are no gearboxes to manipulate. The only inputs a driver has essentially is your handbrake, toggling all-wheel drive, diff lock, and low gear. In addition, I don't believe there is any damage to be taken in the game aside from drowning vehicles, and lastly, there is no fuel management for vehicles like prior titles from Focus Home and Saber. Piggybacking here off downside number 1, configurations for controllers are somewhat different, especially the buttons for toggling all-wheel drive, diff lock, and other things as well. I also found there wasn't a controller configuration for exactly what I use in SnowRunner. Not a big deal here, but perhaps in the future they will add a SnowRunner configuration or the ability to map out our own buttons. In this game, crane controls definitely have a little bit more to them control-wise, and they feel somewhat strange if you come from previous titles. It takes some time to get used to, and there are multiple menus to open to get to the action you desire. I found this to be a downside as well due to some cranes having different controls than others. For example, the large standing crane in the junkyard. From a SnowRunner crane control perspective to this, I will say it's going to take some time and some patience to become proficient. It comes as a big surprise that only scouts are the only vehicle to be able to fire off the winch. Though, if I may be so blunt to say, there hasn't been many areas where I feel my main trucks needed to winch other than just opening up gates that scouts can do. However, vehicles that are equipped with cranes can use the crane winch to do that stuff, but really, that is all. The UI is also something players will just have to get used to. I can't help but feeling a little overwhelmed with the UI, mission tracking, and creating waypoints that don't disappear when you reach them, kinda like the way it is in SnowRunner. The ones you create in RoadCraft don't disappear for some reason until you manually delete them. You also pick up scrap materials found scattered about the map. Finding these resources can be difficult because they are under the Vehicles tab in the menu, and then you have to move around that sub-menu to find them, and when you do, they briefly illuminate a color associated with what they create when salvaged, and this also can be seen on the regular map view as well. And lastly, sometimes mission objectives and what is to be delivered can feel confusing. For example, a mission stated I bring 2 vehicles to a location, but it was actually just the one vehicle and the other vehicle wasn't part of the current requirement, but it lit up as if it was. As you may have heard before from prior videos, vehicles do not have interchangeable add-ons. The loadout that they come with is essentially the job that they are assigned to as a specialization. In the pros, I'll discuss things I like about this, but pertaining to our current downside, I'd like to be able to swap add-ons of like trucks. For instance, instead of the Tega 6455B being strictly a dump truck, he could swap that add-on with the Mule T1's bed and crane combo. Overall though, I feel a lot of players might not favor the lack of customizations. However, I would expect some things to change here with customizations, and you could have different unlockable variants of each truck that probably would have different add-ons and such, but that is all still yet to be discovered. Later we'll talk about crucial upgrades for vehicles by other means, but as it stands there are no upgrades to find from scouting or revealing parts of the map. As the developer has mentioned, trucks essentially come as you find them. I'm not too certain how older consoles will be supported for this title, but as a player who recently upgraded his PC and talking to other PC players as well, the game seems to require a lot of muscle. I'm not quite sure if it's due to the complexity of the terrain deformation and the ability to manipulate maps or not, or it could be just something else. All I can add here before moving on is my upgraded PC parts are working harder than most titles that I play. Focus Home stated recently that off-road driving would not be the main focus of the game, while also showing AI convoys delivering cargo via routes that have been created and hardened by the player. They have also made it very clear that RoadCraft was not the successor to the Runner series. Even though it's not mainly focused on driving, you still actually have to perform in that arena, of which we will touch on later. While us good SnowRunner players love a good haul to a destination, the rationale for AI convoys could be due to our next and final downside. Coming from the perspective of a SnowRunner addict with over 5,300 hours gameplay, I feel things in RoadCraft tend to take some time as well. For example, just to finish my first road construction, it took me over an hour with the management of 3 required vehicles to achieve this. My second attempt, however, was much more streamlined just from learning things, but a lot of operations require attention, precision, and time, which could be the reason the AI was introduced. There are other ways around our current downside, of which is on the upsides list starting right now. I can probably say the worst enemy in SnowRunner is trees, stumps, and roots, being these Gandalf-like objects standing there shouting in defiance, "You shall not pass." But in RoadCraft, you can run over some trees, cut them down for resources, and grind those pesky stumps with specialized equipment made for these jobs. In MudRunner, you could also run over things like this, so in a sense, it feels good that your vehicles are forces to be reckoned with, and not feeling as if they're somewhat of a pinball. For those of you who play SnowRunner or other runner games, we all know the upsides and downsides of a map resetting to its normal way. In SnowRunner, we mostly just can't stand blockages that cannot be moved or altered. Well, I have good news for you. You clear boulders, build bridges, roads, and move debris that stands in your way in RoadCraft. The great thing about this map is that it doesn't reset, and where you move an object is where it stays. This allows for creativity to thrive because one player's path to success can be vastly different than the next. I kinda spoiled upside number 3 here already, but indeed you can be creative to build roads where you choose and bridges where the game allows you to build a bridge. I've picked up scrap materials, built roads and bridges to make passages easier to navigate based upon my needs as a player. You can also choose the type of bridge to build, like a scout bridge, wooden, cement, and metal, as well as a double wide. In my humble opinion, something that makes off-roading type games so appealing is terrain deformation and watching what your tires produce when driving through a surface. So far, I am mostly pleased with how well tracks look. Water and weather effects also add to this experience, making the game feel very much so alive. You'll have sandstorms while working, and on the other side of the spectrum, you'll have downpouring rain. Lastly, the effects of water when entering it and navigating through them appeals to the eye with the small waves radiating from the disturbed surface as well as light reflections. Earlier, I mentioned in the video that you can salvage resources that make crucial materials for your success. Well, at the top right of your screen, you can see those materials you currently have from crafted items found on the map. I spoke earlier on how to navigate that menu, but when you drive around, objects will be briefly cloaked in the color of the material that they actually make when you take them to the salvage zone. This can also be seen on the map view as well. Each piece, depending on its size or its value, will get you closer to crafting that object when turned in. Also, before moving on, a very exciting thing is you can basically pack weird shaped objects in a sideboard bed. In this case, it's actually called strap down, and if they fit in your sideboard bed, you can strap them down, including logs, and they'll just hang outside of your bed but be strapped down into your bed. This allows you to pick up and deliver logs and also other types of cargo without dedicated machines like a logging vehicle, in this case, the forwarder. But for these applications, you can also just use the Mule T1. On one hand, it's kind of odd to not have different add-ons and customizations that you have in SnowRunner or other games. As such, you have a plethora of those things to attach to different vehicles. But on the other hand, in this game, I feel like it boosts the value of the vehicles you currently have because they are highly specialized and formulated to do one job for the team. For example, the Scout is great for its ability to identify scrap cargo around the map and also scout terrain depth around it as well with the press of a button while driving. I think of it as if your vehicles are part of a team and they all contribute their own role in support of the overall mission. Over the years, if you've watched my streams, I lecture a lot about multiplayer being the way to sustain a player base and boost replayability. I have floated the idea of a multiplayer join saves where both the host and the person joining have progress on both sides, unlike it is in SnowRunner. In RoadCraft, however, there will be an option that will allow you a joining player to save all co-op progress to their game saves progress as well. This essentially is kind of a dream come true. Not only that, but joining co-op and overall gameplay in co-op feels pretty good. Downside number 10 mentions the game feeling kind of grindy, but this, alongside with AI, will help speed up progress, increase enjoyment, and drastically improve overall replay of this title. Even though Focus Home and Saber have been very clear that off-roading like SnowRunner is not the sole focus of this title, the game feels great to drive, and you do actually drive quite a bit from what I've experienced. Vehicles feel heavy, stable, and their suspensions along with their frames move very nicely. Tracked vehicles on the other hand feel rigid, but those are indeed heavy construction machinery, not tanks. During my time driving, the conditions and places felt challenging, and the vehicles performed well. If I were to compare to past titles, I would say it kinda has the Expedition feels with some MudRunner mixed in. The game feels somewhat slowed down, and vehicles feel like they are powerful entities against the environment that you set them in. Mentioned previously on the downsides list, vehicles do not have upgrades found on the map, but they can be upgraded in the store/garage after you find them. Vehicles are found in an almost dilapidated state, but they are still useful, and that state is called Rusty. The next upgrade is called Restored, which have better stats than previous found versions. Keeping my final thing short here at number 10, the map view in RoadCraft is actually just a top-down camera. Think of it as an overhead shot that is essentially a live viewing. You can actually see tracks where you have driven and also trucks that are actively driving. It is that detailed. Lastly, indeed, we have a compass that players have been asking for. This, I believe, is an addition that a lot of drivers have been asking for, and thank you, Saber, for that. So in conclusion, a lot of these features like no damage, no fuel, no gearbox are things a viewer, if you've made it this far, are a cause for concern. I'm a hard mode player that has done videos on the subject of fuel management for SnowRunner, but in this case, you have so many moving parts and so much to manage that I feel it would further increase downside number 10 even more. The developer actually has tested this adding fuel, and they've removed it because they didn't feel it added anything to the title. Overall, the appeal of manipulating terrain, shared co-op saves with reliability, and the change of pace from a runner game to a construction management type has been enjoyable to play. You're probably wondering, do I buy this game? As a consumer myself and a player of past runner games, I can say that it's a totally new and separate experience that does have small remnants of past titles. If co-op reliability can hold, I would say you can have a blast playing this with your friends. With knowledge now that things in this game take time, precision, and effort, co-op will probably be the means of play for myself, and I do recommend if co-op is reliable, you play co-op as well. So in closing, RoadCraft has a lot of things players could find displeasing as mentioned, and I share in that as well. But I think it's a good spin-off that can potentially make the Runner series even better than it already is. If I wasn't really interested in creating content for this game, I definitely would still give it a shot at least, or maybe watch a content creator of whom I enjoy for their thoughts. One thing you need to remember about YouTube is that most folks who post videos aren't experts, but we are just normal folks with a microphone and editing software, which is why I always try to say at the end of my videos, try this one out and let me know what you think. So I hope this video was super helpful and informational as well. So until next time guys, God bless and stay upright.